School choice, rural hospitals, voter access. The 2026 Mississippi Legislature will impact you and your family for years to come. MPB brings you At Issue, a weekly analysis of the legislative session and the issues affecting you with perspectives from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones and new At Issue analyst Rebecca Staples join me, Wilson Stribling, every Monday at 5 p.m. only on MPB Think Radio and wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
Listening to Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino. We're going to explore the ideas and people that are shaping Mississippi's future like we do every Wednesday. Different time now. We used to be at 10 a.m. Now we're at 4 p.m. I like the later time in the day. My brain is awake more.
Me too. I like it because I know we've got ears on us.
And there are people listening.
Yes.
Not to say that 10 a.m.
No,
there aren't listeners.
We had ears.
But, most people work and stuff.
Yeah.
There's that.
Now we got drive time, Russ.
Now we got some drive time, so that's good. Germaine in the booth, always effervescent and lovely.
Yes, sir.
It's still too cold outside.
Yeah, it is, and it's acting up out there, and I don't like it.
It's windy and acting up. We are joined in studio by the one and only State Representative Lee Yancey from the mean streets of Rankin County. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Russ. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. The legislature is a creature of a schedule, right?
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of people who are not daily followers of the legislature, they don't realize how much everything is dependent on specific deadlines. And there was an important deadline yesterday in the legislature. Care to share a little bit about what that was and the impact of it?
Sure. Yesterday was the deadline to get bills that originated in the House out of House committees and bills that originated in the Senate out of Senate committees. And any bills that did not make it out of committee yesterday are dead.
Okay. And then later, I guess in early March, March 3rd, there's another committee deadline to get bills from the other chamber
That's right.
out. So if you passed a House bill, sent it to the Senate, then the Senate has to get that out of committee by March 3rd and vice versa. If the Senate passed a bill and sent it over to you guys, y'all have to deal with it by March 3rd, or again, it is dead.
That's right. And today was the first day of floor action. So this is the first day that we've debated bills on the floor and actually had, questions from members of the House of Representatives to whoever was presenting. And so this is a good time to come and watch your legislature in action. The sausage making process is happening right now as we speak.
So I was sitting here thinking of all sorts of devious questions to ask you, in part because I've known you for a long time. As an example, I was about to ask you who your least favorite member of the House of Representatives was. I'm not actually going to ask you that. Maybe later, though. Maybe later in the session you can come back when people are angry, and then you can tell me.
Well, let's come back later and talk about that.
Fair enough. So I say that because the session always, as it unfolds, tempers flare. People have disagreements about things that they thought should have been passed and things that they thought should have been killed. Yesterday was the first sort of like, hey, we're going to have a sense of what's alive and what's dead. From your perspective, what are the bills that died yesterday that maybe you wish hadn't?
It's all still fresh. We've got our calendar, which I have it here in my hand, that has 240 general bills on it that survived. And so there were thousands of bills that did not survive. And generally, when a bill is assigned to my own committee, I have control and I can decide if I'm going to bring it out in committee or if I'm just not going to bring it out and let it die, like a pocket veto, so to speak. And I had some bills in other committees that I liked, that I was trying to get accomplished, but there were none that I was so emotionally attached to that I'm upset over it. it's almost a relief at some point to shed those thousands of bills, and each one of those bills has a lobbyist attached to it who wants that bill to come out, or who doesn't want that bill to come out, or who wants an amendment to that bill if it does come out, or wants an exception to that bill. They don't want to be affected by it. And so at some point, some of those bills, which may have started out as a good bill, become so bogged down with, everyone wanting their, to be exempted from it or wanting an amendment that it's just too much of a hassle to even fool with it. And you say, let's do some more work on this in the off season and come back next year and try to have a better, smoother ride for a particular bill.
Well, I know one of those bills that died yesterday that didn't actually die because of the committee bill deadline, but it was the controversial bill over school choice. We've talked about it pretty extensively on this program. The House passed HB 2, which was a bill that had the support of President Donald Trump and Governor Tate Reeves and obviously the Speaker of the House and 60-some-odd members of the House of Representatives.
61.
Was it 61 or 62?
61 to 59.
Yeah, it was a tight vote. Got sent over to the Senate, and the Senate did not have to take it up yet, but they took it up on their own committee deadline. And within, I think, 2 minutes, killed that bill. So that one's dead for the session. Although I should say that there are, around the Capitol, you hear, well, is it dead, or dead?
Sure.
And nothing's ever truly dead until you sign and die.
Well, trying to pass a bill is a long process, and I view the first time we send a bill to the Senate as an opening negotiating position. You know that it's probably not going to come back the way that you sent it over, and the senators would view this the same way if they were sending us a bill that was a big part of what they wanted to accomplish. And you can also read about this in The Art of the Deal, if you want to read President Trump's book from the 80s. You always want to put more in a bill than you think you're going to get, because you have to have some things that you're willing to shed in order to compromise to get the 80% of what you want. And so, it was an opening negotiating position. I think it was a good bill overall. I'm not on the Education Committee. I really struggled with the bill because there was so much controversy surrounding it from the school system and from people that I knew who were administrators, who were wonderful people, who love their jobs and are really just trying to protect what they have and what they do. But at the same time, I couldn't help but believe that there were children who were trapped in schools that weren't the best place for them, and there had to be some remedy for them being in those places and having an opportunity to go to a school where they could thrive. You get one chance to go through school, and ultimately it came down to the fact that child was stuck and needed help, and was I going to help? And so, my wife said to me, she says, I can tell you're struggling over this vote. She said, how would you vote if you didn't feel any pressure from either side? And I said, I would probably vote for it because it's good policy. And it's good for that child that's stuck, that needs a chance to have a different school to go to. And she said, well, there's your answer. I said, can it be that simple? And we both agreed that it was that simple. And that's what I was, basically elected to do, was to try to make the best decision that I could with the information that I had. And I personalized it with that child who needed more than what they were getting. And they're all over the state,
Yeah, and look, I've always said that when you guys do something, it's never as good as what they say it's going to be, and it's never as bad as what they say it's going to be either, right? Depending on which side of the fight you're on, right?
Right.
And there very often are extremely dramatic claims about what a bill does and doesn't do. And oftentimes you'll hear proponents say, oh, this is going to be transformational. It's going to change everything. And you do it, and it does change lives.
Right.
But is it on scale transformational? Oftentimes not. Or the flip side, people will say, well, the sky will fall if we do this thing over here. And then you look around and you're like, well, 17 other states have done it, and the sky didn't fall in any of those states. And so I do think there's just so much, and I think this speaks to your point. There's often so much emotion and fear, and like people get worked into frenzies When in reality, if you looked at the policy itself, it's not nearly as dramatic as what people are making out to be. Even the ESA in that HB2 was only 6,250 kids.
Right.
Right? I mean, we're not talking about but like 1.5% of the total population.
It was really a pilot program to test this and see how it did.
Yeah.
You know?
So we'll see how all that unfolds. I mean, these ideas very often percolate. They make it so far, and then it comes back as something else later. We've seen that with a lot of things. The income tax elimination was a good example of that. It took a number of years to get to the point where the legislature agreed that that was a good goal and how they would do it. The new school funding formula is another great example of that, right? It took years and years to get people to agree to what that was going to look like.
Absolutely. It takes a long time to accomplish big things like that.
So of the good things that are out there, what are the bills that you're looking at that either you're the sponsor of or even if you're not the sponsor of, that you're like, hey, this actually could make an impact?
Well, a couple of years ago when Speaker White became Speaker, he kind of reshuffled the deck, and I used to be chairman of drug policy under Speaker Philip Gunn, and now I'm chairman of business and commerce. And so I handle a lot of bills that deal with business licensing and business regulations. And, one of the things we want to do as much as possible is cut red tape and help businesses help them thrive, have an environment that would be good for them. A couple of things that I have worked on today, because I probably was at the well all morning, just about past 12 to 15 bills, and we're trying to put some things in place that would help people who are contract workers, who maybe they're traveling nurses or they go from job to job and they get 1099s at each job, and they really have a hard time getting health benefits or retirement benefits, life, disability. I mean, you go on and on. And so what this bill would do is the Voluntary Portable Benefits Plan Act, and it allows the hiring party and the independent contractor. So if you think employer, employee without using those terms, hiring party and independent contractor, it allows them both to contribute to a portable benefits plan for the independent contractor, for the employee. And they both have 100% tax deductible contributions to that, and it's portable, and they can take it with them to the next job that they go to, and it's completely voluntary. The employer doesn't have to, or the hiring party doesn't have to participate, but they can participate if they would like to. They get a tax deduction if they do. And so this was a way for those who are 1099 employees who go from job to job to have all of these benefits, just follow them wherever they are. And it was, it's a really good bill, and I'm very proud of it, and it passed, I think it passed unanimously this morning.
That's always a nice feeling when something like that passes unanimously.
Absolutely.
We have to take a commercial break, but when we come back, it's literally 4:20, so this is appropriate. We're going to talk about marijuana in Mississippi. Lee has been very involved in the medical marijuana program. As he said, was the chairman of House Drug Policy whenever that got passed. And we're talking with Lee Yancey. You're listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino. It's 4:20, and we'll be right back.
Destroys the one who hates. The others that you hated, go on about their business. Care of us.
So the legacy of Medgar Evers is an understanding of our own humanity and of our own responsibility of seeing that in other people.
He is written out of history. He's just not included as Malcolm and Martin. To me, it's the 3 M's, and Medgar is right up there at the lead.
Everlasting, Life and Legacy of Medgar Evers. Watch now on MPB Passport. Visit mpbonline.org for more.
School choice, rural hospitals, voter access. The 2026 Mississippi legislature will impact you and your family for years to come. MPB brings you At Issue, a weekly analysis of the legislative session and the issues affecting you with perspectives from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones and new At Issue analyst Rebecca Staples join me, Wilson Stribling, every Monday at 5 p.m. only on MPB Think Radio and wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
At the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience in Meridian, we believe in the power of the arts, storytelling, and education, just like Mississippi Public Broadcasting. MPB connects communities across the state with quality programs that inform, inspire, and engage. Their audience is loyal and appreciative of businesses that support public broadcasting, which makes underwriting on MPB a smart investment. Join us in supporting MPB. Learn more at mpbfoundation.org.
You're listening to The Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. Lee Yancey and I were having a great little conversation right there. You heard some of it. Representative Lee Yancey, we were talking before the break, and I joked about it being 420. You were involved in the design of the medical marijuana program in Mississippi. That came on the heels of a ballot initiative vote where I think 74% of Mississippians said that they wanted some form of medical marijuana program in the state. That got struck down by the Supreme Court, but then it kind of got put in your lap to figure out what would it look like to give the people what they have suggested they wanted. Is that a fair characterization?
That's right. And, when I was appointed drug policy chairman, I thought, well, at least the ballot initiative has already happened and I won't have to deal with medical marijuana. But, of course, the Supreme Court threw it out and there it was. And Speaker Gunn asked me to, kind of come up with a House position and work with Senator Blackwell in the Senate to try and come up with some type of agreement that both the House and the Senate could vote on. And we worked all through, I guess, from July all the way to January of 2021. And then I think in January of 2022, we came out with a bill that was passed by 90% of the Senate and almost 90% of the House. So that's a miracle in and of itself that it had that kind of support. But it just shows you how much work we put into it, and there were so many considerations as to what it would be like and what law enforcement thought about it and what the businesses thought about it, employment law. Could you use it while you were driving a car? Of course not. Who could get it? What were the conditions going to be? And we looked at the other states across the country. I think we were maybe somewhere around the 19th, 20th, 21st state to make a medical program. And we just basically took the best practices from those states and crafted a bill that had wide range support. And I think that you would have to say that our program has been a success. It's regulated by the Department of Health and the Department of Revenue, various things they have. But we have, as of January 30th, we had 67,000 medical cannabis patients in Mississippi. If we've got 3 million, then we're talking about 2% of the population who has a card. And these are people who have been diagnosed with a very strict list of debilitating conditions, whether it's cancer or multiple sclerosis or muscular dystrophy or on and on. It's things that you really can't fake. And they now have an alternative to opioids. They don't have to take opioids anymore for their pain. Some of these people are dying in hospices, and if they didn't have this option, in order not to feel the pain, they would have to be put into a coma pretty much. And now they can spend their last weeks of life being lucid and having conversations with their family and as more pain-free than they were. So it's a really good option, really good tool in the toolkit for a physician or a nurse practitioner to be able to, recommend someone for a card to have this option.
So in your mind, then, the program has worked the way it was designed to work, or is working closely to what you thought it was designed to work with. I assume that as the program has been sort of built out, that there are issues that have come up that you guys maybe hadn't anticipated when you first wrote it, which is completely normal whenever you're doing something as complex and big as what you were doing. What are those things that you're looking at today that you think the program needs tweaking with? What legislation is currently out there to tweak, and maybe give some indication of what that legislation would do?
So 4 years ago, we passed this law, and each year we've come back and tweaked it a little bit to try to make it more efficient, or to make it easier for a person to go through the process to get a card, or to, I think last year we had a problem because we had, copied Missouri's medical cannabis unit, equivalency unit, and where we said that so much flower equals so much concentrate equals so much of a THC infused product or an edible. And with those 3 different types of cannabis, you wanted to make sure that there was an equivalency unit that had an equal amount of THC in each different kind, so that we could get our measurements appropriate and our dosages appropriate. And we had to fix that because it was a little out of whack last year, and the flower had more THC than the rest, and so we just kind of leveled it out. But this year we've got a couple of bills. One comes from the Department of Health called Right to Try medical cannabis, and you've heard Right to Try with regard to people with other
experimental drugs.
Yes, but this is written very, very tightly. If there is a person who does not have a qualifying debilitating medical condition that's listed in the Medical Cannabis Act, but they have an illness that is chronic or progressive or severely disabling, they can be considered for inclusion in this program. And the way they do that is that their treating medical provider can submit a petition to the State Department of Health requesting authorization for that patient to get a medical cannabis card. And the bill specifies all the information that has to be included in the petition, and it provides that the state health officer, who is Dr. Edney, is the sole decision-making authority on all such petitions that are submitted, and that his decision whether to let them in or out is final and cannot be appealed. And it provides that the department may limit the type, form, or volume of cannabis that's authorized, and that these patients have to be subject to periodic reevaluation no less than 12 months. So it's a very narrowly written bill, but it gives a way for a person who doesn't have one of these conditions, for their physician or their nurse practitioner to petition the health department for them to consider this person on a case-by-case basis. That would not open up the door for everyone with that particular condition. It's just that one person. But if they continue to have people with a certain condition that they kept allowing and saw that there was, some promising results, it could lead to the adding of another condition down the road, but it'd be a very slow process. But the Board of Health can already grant petitions for adding conditions. All you have to do is submit it to the board, and they can do that now. They just haven't done it. No one has submitted a petition that's been successful, or maybe they haven't even submitted. I'm not sure, but
so I assume on something like that you probably have cases that have come up that have led to people to realize, hey, there are circumstances that we presently haven't considered that on limited exception basis should have access to this. That this is not a hypothetical. There have been people who probably needed this or thought that it would be appropriate treatment that have not been able to get it.
That's right, and there are conditions that other states have that we don't have, most notably anxiety or insomnia, that are very broad type conditions that more people would fall into those categories than some of these other categories that we have not opened the door to. And I don't think the health department is open to looking at those particular conditions, but the industry certainly wants to go in that direction, and we continue looking and looking at the evidence. And we've got a research, Mississippi Medical Cannabis Research arm at Ole Miss that is studying cannabis. Of course, on the federal level, they've been studying at Ole Miss since
decades.
The 60s, and growing it and studying it and breaking it down. And if we can ever get to the point where we know which cannabinoids positively affect which debilitating conditions or which symptoms, then we're on to something, because you've got your THC that everyone knows about, but you've also got CBD and CBG and CBN and about 15 other cannabinoids. And supposedly there are about 150 cannabinoids, and they don't even know what they do. And so this is a very young science because it's never been allowed to be studied because it's been Schedule I all these years. And now we've got some leeway to study it by having a state program that the federal government basically, looks the other way. And they've been doing that, for over 20 years, in states all across the country, as long as states adhere to their state laws.
So we've got about 30 seconds left, and I wanted to broach another subject with you very briefly, which is your name gets mentioned as a potential statewide candidate quite a good bit. Is that something that you're currently pondering?
Well, Russ, you probably remember I've run statewide before, so I know exactly what I would be getting into. And so I don't take that kind of talk or that thought lightly. I would love to serve in some capacity going forward, and I'm looking at several statewide races, and we'll make a decision at the appropriate time as to which race, would be probably better suited for me. I'm praying about it. I've talked with my wife about it. She's given me the green light, and so then that's very, very important to me. That's what keeps you married for 33 years is making sure that you've got a good trust and communication level. And, I'm a grandfather now. My wife's a grandmother. We're a loving life and having fun. And all of the life experiences that I've had as a 2-time cancer survivor and all my experience in the legislature, in the Senate, and in the House, I think I understand state government and how it works and how to make it run more smoothly and efficiently, and would love a chance to maybe look at something down the road.
Lee, thank you. We'll have to have you back in.
Thank you, Russ.
You're listening to The Sit Down. We'll be right back with Christina Dent.
Mississippi is a place of deep roots where every story matters and every voice can be heard. At MPB, we stand with our local communities, bringing you the voices of those who shape our state through local programming that reflects our culture across small towns to big cities, from the Delta to the coast. We tell the stories that define us, from the music that carries our voices to the leaders who inspire change. MPB brings you the heart of Mississippi, celebrating Mississippi one story at a time. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Together through the years, together in the future. MPB, your stories, our mission.
The Measuring Show.
Since 1970, MPB has been enriching the lives of Mississippians.
Everything we do gives us the chance to grow and learn.
With your support, we are always there whenever and wherever you need us. Together through the years, together in the future. Please consider making a donation at mpbfoundation.org. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Hello, there I am. There I am.
I turned me on.
Well, you could do it. You're listening to Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm Russ Latino. We are joined in studio by Christina Dent. Christina, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being in. I wanted to address two quick things before I dive in with Christina and her work at End It for Good. We got a couple emails in recent weeks that I wanted to respond to. One was about MAEP and the school funding formula. This came after a segment with House Speaker Jason White in which we talked about increases in education spending by the legislature. It's increased on a per-pupil basis by 73% over the last decade, adjusted for inflation, and by about 53% on a total basis. So the legislature has pumped a bunch of money into the system. But this email said MAEP was never fully funded. It is true that MAEP was not very often funded. Never is an incorrect word. It was, in fact, funded, I think, 3 times fully. And since MAEP has been done away with, the legislature has increased general fund spending by $700 million in just the last few years to education, including the largest teacher pay raise in state history. They're currently discussing another teacher pay raise. The other one was about the Voting Rights Act and the implication of the Supreme Court decision coming up. I just want to mention that I think that there are legitimate concerns around what that looks like, particularly if you're an African-American citizen and you're used to those protections. What will it mean in terms of your voice, making sure that your voice doesn't get diluted? Those are all legitimate questions. So I at least wanted to touch the mailbag. Now I will be quiet and talk to my guests. Christina, tell us a little bit about what End It for Good is, because without some description, I think people would be like, what are we ending?
Yeah. So we are a nonprofit. We've been around since 2019, founded then, based right here in Mississippi. I'm born and raised Mississippian. I started it after becoming a foster parent and realizing we had vastly misunderstood addiction, and also just the broader picture of drug policy, how we can actually reduce harm. And that's a big part of what we do. So we travel around the state, we educate people. We're not going into schools. This is not like drug education for teenagers. This is helping adults understand, why are we not getting better outcomes, and what could we do to actually get better outcomes. And when we say that, we're thinking lower overdose rates, more people being able to live healthy, thriving lives and not struggling with addiction, less crime related to drug markets. All of those things are part of the work that we do, finding solutions that can address all of those.
And so I would assume that part of this for you is an evidence sort of driven realization that the war on drugs, however good the intent was, had not delivered the kind of outcomes or optimal outcomes that you might have expected or wanted out of those policies.
Yep.
Is that a fair?
Yes. And that is the End It for Good, is ending this kind of criminal justice approach, the war on drugs approach, and shifting to a health-centered approach that understands addiction as a complex health crisis. And I think once we shift our policies to match that and our culture to match that, we're going to start seeing a lot better outcomes.
You have this is not something that you started in the abstract. You have a personal reason for caring about this issue the way that you care about this issue. Would you share that?
Yeah. So my husband and I became foster parents in 2014, and nothing in our training prepared us for understanding addiction. There just was that wasn't part of it then. And, I grew up in conservative, evangelical Mississippi. Those are still values that I have. But the thinking around addiction really was more character-driven. This is a character problem. This is people who have lost their moral compass. And so they need to be corrected. And I think that's where that criminal justice punishment comes in. And so for me, as I met the mother of our foster son, I have now met so many people who are either in recovery or family members of people still struggling with addiction or people still struggling themselves, realizing, wow, this is a really complex health crisis. People are struggling and they need tools that help them meet the actual problem. And the problem isn't drugs. The problem is what is going on underneath that is causing a person to want to numb those experiences and feelings with drugs. The drugs are the coping mechanism. They're not actually the core problem someone's dealing with. And as I got to see that in the mother of our foster son, it really changed my heart. set me on a learning journey. That changed my mind and started In It for Good to invite more Mississippians onto that learning journey.
Yeah, it's incredible. If you look at Mississippi's incarceration rates, we lead the nation, or maybe we're number 2 now, but we led the nation for a while in total incarceration as a percentage of our population. In a country that candidly leads the world in incarceration, right? I mean, we've got 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. So we put a lot of people in prison for a lot of things. And the number of people that are sitting in Mississippi prison with addiction problems, or addiction is the root of what led to the crime, is astronomical, right?
Yeah, so we've got, around 20,000 people at any given time in Mississippi prisons. That's not counting jails, county city jails. And 4,000 of those are there on nonviolent drug charges. And thousands more are struggling with an addiction. If you talk just with people who work in the prison system, they would say something like, probably 80% of the people here have an addiction that they're dealing with. And drugs are readily available in jails and prisons. It is like, the same market is playing out there as is playing out in the real world, which is there's demand for substances to change the way you feel, and people are going to find a way to sell those. It's a way to make money. And so prison isn't helping people overcome an addiction, but it is making life much harder for their families, for them, for employment. And for us, it's not just about the person struggling with the addiction they have. It is this big picture of how can we help more Mississippians live a healthy, thriving life? We have a low workforce participation rate. How can we help more people get in the workforce? When you start looking at how many people have a criminal record in Mississippi, about 1 in 10 adults has a felony, about 1 in 4 adults has a criminal conviction of some kind. That is unbelievable when we think about employment opportunity for our citizens, and just something that we need to grapple with, that a drug charge is arguably the easiest way to get into the criminal justice system, and maybe not the right tool for addressing that challenge.
It's interesting that you bring up the fact that the addiction and rehabilitation programs often become the place that people find the source of their addiction. Michael Moore, who was the first person let out under the new parole law that was passed, I think, back in 2021, has told me in conversation that addiction and recovery program was absolutely where, like, if you wanted to get drugs, that's where you went, was to the program that was designed to help you overcome your addiction. And so I think the prisons do a lot of good things, and I think they've made a lot of improvements, candidly, in the last few years.
Yep.
But prison is a really hard place to teach somebody about addiction.
And it's interesting because I talked with a nurse who works in one of our prisons. She came to one of the events that we held, and she came up to me afterwards and she said, we intentionally do not help people recover from trauma or the underlying causes of their addiction because it is cruel to open that box in a person's psychological, their mind and their heart, and then send them back into a prison environment that's incredibly traumatic. She said that's cruel. People can't do that in prison, which is such an interesting thing for us to think about, that what we recognize people need in terms of recovery and dealing with the underlying causes, prison is not an environment that allows them to deal with those things. And I think that's, again, we're not going to see the kind of outcomes we want to see in recovery if we're using that tool to try to get there.
So what are the things in your mind that we're doing wrong in Mississippi, or maybe across the country, as it relates to addiction? And what are the preconceived notions that allow those missteps to continue?
I think it is this core belief that substance use is something bad people do, and addiction is something that people who don't care anymore about their families. They're doing things that hurt their families. So how could a good person be involved in that? And I think for us to begin to take a step back from that emotion and the things that we have taken in for decades in the United States and our drug policy and how we talk about drugs, and say, we have tried this punishment method for decades. It has not gotten us good places. There's 385,000 Mississippians that struggle with addiction right now. And we incarcerate, as you said, more people than anywhere else in the world, just about. And so to shift towards understanding there is a deeper issue going on and people need help. Punishment isn't going to help them solve that challenge of their addiction. and to introduce new tools. And I'm super excited about, there's a bill in the legislature right now that would make Mississippi on the front edge of a psychedelic treatment called Ibogaine that is being used in other parts of the world. We would love to see come to the United States, and Mississippi would be part of kind of the front end of that if this bill passes. And so there are new tools that we can use.
Is that Representative Sam Creekmore?
It is. So he's chair of the Public Health Committee. And he learned about Ibogaine, got really passionate about it, and said, hey, what can we do here in Mississippi to have more tools? Because it's not just stopping the wrong things. We would say that the criminal justice system is not going to solve our addiction problem, and it actually tends to make it worse because it's very, very traumatic. But we need more of the right tools. We need tools. Addiction's very serious. It destroys families. It destroys people's lives. Can we have more tools? So we already have things like AA. The health department offers taxpayer-funded medications for opioid use disorder. It's far cheaper to do that than it is for somebody to be engaged in an active addiction and all of the healthcare costs that come with that, of being in the ER, getting infections, all of that sort of thing. People can call their local health department and get access to that program now anywhere in the state. So that is a wonderful opportunity that we have. So we've got medications, we've got mutual aid groups. This bill would put us on track to bring new types of treatment, such as Ibogaine, to Mississippi. And that's really exciting. So I think, people tend to think Mississippi is not the place things change. And what we're seeing is that people really are wanting to solve the problem. And they're open to saying, you know what, we may not agree on all the tools, but we definitely need more tools. And we're really seeing that move forward.
Yeah, look, and I think that at some level, it's just a realization that there are people in our communities that are hurting, and we've never figured out how to help. And so if what we're doing right now is not the answer, then we need to be looking for what the other answers are. We've got to take a brief break. We'll come back with Christina after the break. I want to talk a little bit more about what legislation is pending that you guys are interested in. Also, maybe want to ask you how you respond to the charge that this is some sort of liberal conspiracy to let drugs run rampant on the streets. You're listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino. We'll be right back.
At the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience in Meridian, we believe in the power of the arts, storytelling, and education, just like Mississippi Public Broadcasting. MPB connects communities across the state with quality programs that inform, inspire, and engage. Their audience is loyal and appreciative of businesses that support public broadcasting, which makes underwriting on MPB a smart investment. Join us in supporting MPB. Learn more at mpbfoundation.org.
School choice, rural hospitals, voter access. The 2026 Mississippi Legislature will impact you and your family for years to come. MPB brings you At Issue, a weekly analysis of the legislative session and the issues affecting you with perspectives from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones and new At Issue analyst Rebecca Staples join me, Wilson Stribling, every Monday at 5 p.m. only on MPB Think Radio and wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
You're listening to The Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino, talking right now with Christina Dent from End It for Good, an organization that she founded out of a personal passion for seeing in her own life that our way of addressing addiction as a society doesn't really speak to the core drivers of addiction, and it doesn't lead to good outcomes. And I think your voice has been very important in the debate. I think some people listening to this interview, or that know you and know your work, might look at it and say, okay, well, this is like a really soft version of advocating for Oregon, right? Pure, full legalization of all drugs. And that it is really just sort of a libertarian play. How would you respond to people who would look at it with that sort of framing or criticism?
So I love a devil's advocate question, so thank you for that. I would say what I think Mississippi has the opportunity to do is to show how a shift towards a health-centered approach to drugs and addiction can be done in a way that is good for public health and public safety. And that's the opportunity that we have. Any other state has it also. I just think Mississippi is uniquely situated because I don't think we run the risk of some of the negative outcomes that have happened in other places where maybe public order has not been a big enough concern. And so for us as an organization, we're always thinking about not just how do you reduce harm to somebody who is using substances, but how do you reduce harm to their family and the broader community? Because our behavior impacts other people. So I would think about it like the way that we approach alcohol. We have laws that allow people to drink alcohol. We even allow you to get drunk if you want to. But we have laws that are going to protect the broader community. We have laws against drinking and driving. We have laws against going home and beating up your spouse. It's not like we just have a blank check for people to do whatever they want to do with alcohol. There are ways that we protect public order and public health, even though we allow people to make that decision. And I think that is the approach that we can take with more substances. Now, some drugs have a higher risk profile than others. They should be more tightly regulated. I would not be one, and we would not be as an organization, of the position of kind of, just stick everything out on the shelves and just let people make the decisions that they want to. I think there's really good common sense regulations. We have those on other substances right now. You can buy alcohol and tobacco, two of the most addictive, harmful to your body substances that are on the planet. And we have found a way, and we have found a place as a culture to say we can take a middle ground here. We tried alcohol prohibition. We decided that was not the path for us. And I think that we can do that with other substances. But the bigger piece, I think, actually, that is more important for Mississippi is that there are new substances that are actually making that conversation a little bit less important about what we've done in the past. One of those is kratom. So kratom is a plant substance that comes from Southeast Asia. People use it in powder form. You can mix it up and drink it like a tea. And people use it for all sorts of health conditions. It has become particularly popular over the last decade as opioid pills have gotten harder and harder to get. People were looking for other options for pain management, and they have found kratom. Now, you can become dependent on kratom. You can misuse it, as you can many things. And yet, there are thousands of Mississippians who are using it for health-related causes. I just had people up at the Capitol yesterday that were sharing their stories with legislators. Someone who's using it for PTSD, somebody's using it for pain management from a broken back and neck that they got as a teenager. Another person who is using it as a means of ending a many, many year opioid addiction. So when we have a natural substance like that, you were just talking with Chairman Yancey, we've now shifted back to at least a medical program for cannabis, and we're seeing we lost 50 years of research by having it scheduled so tightly for so long. And we have an opportunity with something like kratom to say, here's something new and interesting. Let's not take the same path of banning another substance and making it impossible to to research and all of that. Let's take a health approach.
I think part of the difficulty, and obviously I've known you for a while, I largely agree with your work, and I definitely know where your heart is, which I think is in a really good place, trying to help people. I think part of the difficulty on anything that you're talking about that feels like a big change is that it just scares the hell out of people, right? And so from the time that I was a child, I saw the Don't Do Drug ads. I heard about the war on drugs. One of my favorite presidents of all time, Ronald Reagan, certainly pushed a lot of that message. And so it is hard, I think, for people who came up with a certain message, even if they recognize that it hasn't worked, to try something that feels radical to them. Do you run into a lot of that?
Some, but I think what has really built us a lot of bridges in Mississippi, and that is working with a lot of folks who say, we don't agree with you on everything, but we agree with you on some things, and we're willing to work with you on that, is that we are very much interested in incrementalism. I think it can go really badly if you make a massive change really quickly, and you don't have the time to kind of figure out how to manage that change in the public sphere. So I am in favor of small steps over time. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of this overnight either. But I think the more that people see changes like, just a couple years ago in Mississippi, we did not allow fentanyl testing strips. And it was a non-starter in the legislature. Well, the next year it came back and passed overwhelmingly. In both chambers was signed into law. You can now get fentanyl testing strips because we recognize now this is not facilitating someone's drug use. This is helping them stay alive. And that's the first goal. If they're struggling with an addiction, they can't get help if they're dead. If they're using a pill at a party recreationally, they can't make a better choice if they're dead. So we want to first keep them alive. And I think as people have seen things like that work and the sky hasn't fallen, they're open to taking the next step to see how can we solve this problem because our loved ones are dying, our kids' friends are dying. We want better outcomes. We want better solutions. And I think people are open to some things they might not have been before.
Christina, thanks for coming in and thanks for your perspective today.
Thanks, Russ.
Really appreciate it. The Sit Down is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting Think Radio, made possible thanks to the generous support of listeners just like you. If you enjoy the guests and sit-downs we bring each and every week, please consider making a contribution to help keep shows like this on the air. Visit mpbonline.org or show your support using the MPB Public Media app. Today's show was produced by the always wonderful Germaine Flood with live stream production by Abram Nanny, my man back there. For my guest, Representative Lee Yancey, Christina Dent, I'm Russ Latino. Stay tuned. Wait. That says something that's not true.
Come back next week.
Come back next week. Come back next week, babies. We'll be here. This has been The Sit Down. Have a good one.